o'clock news began broadcasting the first week we went on the air. It has been voted the best news in Northern California 4 times in the Emmy Awards competition. And in 1988, we won the top honor for Best Newscast in Northern California from the Radio and Television News Directors Association. And I'm pleased to have been associated with these top-rated professionals. Oh, hello, news fans. I'm speaking to you from the Channel 2 newsroom, where I have some... Oh, excuse me, my phone. The Channel 2? Hello, Chad. How's David? Fine. Well, I don't have it all together yet, Chad. Well, you can catch it all on the Les Nichols, Al Hemsel 10 o'clock news. Right on Channel 2. Yeah. Well, you can catch it in time for your show tomorrow night. Sure. Excuse me, that's my other phone. Channel 2. Douglas! How's Walter? Fine. Well, you can catch it as usual. Yeah, Les Nichols, Al Hemsel, 10 o'clock news on Channel 2. Yeah. Excuse me, there's my other phone. Chet, here's Douglas. Douglas, talk to Chet. Channel 2. John. How's Virginia? Fine. No, I don't have it all together yet. Well, you can catch it tonight. Yeah, 10 o'clock news. Just a minute. See, folks? Everybody gets their news from Les Nichols and Al Hemsel on Channel 2 at 10. Why don't you?
Hi, I'm Elaine Corral.
And I'm Dennis Richmond.
That promo with Ronnie Shell was from 1958. And if your memory needs a little jogging, those network news anchors Ronnie was talking to were Douglas Edwards of CBS, Chet Huntley of NBC, and John Daly of ABC.
These two men, though, Les Nichols and Al Hemsel, were the first anchors of the 10 o'clock news. Channel 2 was one of the few independent TV stations in the country to sign on with a primetime newscast, and we're really proud to be a part of that tradition.
During our first year on the air, the United States and Russia were in the middle of the Cold War, and the sighting of Russian fishing trawlers off Point Reyes fueled the panic that there were Russian spies everywhere. With a bird's-eye view, reporter Pat O'Brien filed this report.
The vessels are part of a Russian fishing fleet numbering by some count 70 vessels, which have been operating off the coasts of Washington, Oregon, and now California. And their presence is not exactly welcomed by American officials. Today in Seattle, the president of the Congress of American Fishermen, W.G. Saletick, said he was convinced the Soviet fishing fleet is, as he put it, military-oriented and constitutes a serious threat to the security of the nation. Saletick alleged to reports of Russian-made homing devices found on the bottom off the west coast. He believes an activity much more sinister than fishing brought the Russian fishing fleet to our coast.
I'd like you to meet a very good friend of ours, Ray Jacobs. He's been with Channel 2 since the very first days, the days in those caves we've been talking about. You've probably seen Ray many times. He's the editorial spokesperson for Channel 2. In fact, many people probably think you own the place.
I do, Dennis.
Tell us what you really do. And how many jobs you've had since you've been here?
Well, I spent a few years behind an anchor desk, just like you two have. I was production manager, news director, program manager, operations director, administrative director, editorial director, as you said, and now I'm back in news again.
There are some people that really think in the newsroom that you were the very first anchor person here.
No, that's not true.
That's not, but they think it that way, so we'll let them remember it that way. But what was it like to anchor the news then?
Entirely different. The cameras were black and white. They were on tripods. There were no teleprompters. The show was a lot shorter. It was a half-hour program. We didn't have videotape. When we started, we didn't even have film. We grew into handheld, silent 16-millimeter black and white cameras to shoot news film, and we used to have to drive the film up to Berkeley to have it developed at a corner drugstore.
What about the union jurisdictional situations? You told us about a situation where you were wearing 2 hats at one time and could have gotten into trouble.
Well, we decided to do a remote telecast from the site of a mass where Pope Pius XII was visiting San Francisco. And in those days, the job of directing remotes away from the studio belonged to engineers, and I was not a member of that union, but I directed the remote. And my picture as director appeared on the cover of the Engineers magazine, and we got caught. Yeah. We had this world figure, the Pope, coming to town. And he wasn't just another news interviewer, another character in a news program. He was a very special person, and we treated the broadcast that way. The setup of the cameras, again, we're talking about black and white cameras. The way we hung mics around. I had a priest working me as a director who was giving me instructions on what was coming next in the mass so we could follow it. It was just an entirely different feel to it.
And all of this, and you're still only 39 years old.
That's right.
I think it's amazing.
And I'm going backwards, too, Elaine.
Thank you very much, Ray.
Thanks, Ray.
During the 60s, our anchor team changed. Gary Park and Stan Atkinson took over. They were later joined by Don Chamberlain and Carlton Cordell.
In 1966, one of the Bay Area's most famous landmarks, the Sutro Bathhouse, was gutted by fire.
Well, as it stands now, the entire building in the rear is down. It was very difficult because of the ocean side and that section of the building to the rear where it's inaccessible to us. Most of this fire had to be taken from the front of the building. The only damage that we could give an estimate on is possibly about $100,000 to the restaurants in the complex on both sides of the fire.
The 60s would turn out to be a decade of turmoil. Assassin's bullets felled 3 of America's most promising leaders. President John Kennedy, that was in November of 1963. Martin Luther King Jr., April 1968. 2 months later, Senator Robert Kennedy.
In our own backyard, college campuses became the site of violence. At San Francisco State University, President S.I. Hayakawa confronted student leaders and earned a reputation for being tough. In the East Bay, UC Berkeley became a nightly news feature, not only for local stations, but on the network as well. Reporter Claude Mann was at the site of People's Park.
The issue has now grown far broader than who should control a piece of university property on which street people and students build a park. And from here, I see no early solution in sight. This is Claude Mann reporting from the University of California in Berkeley.
Anti-war demonstrations became even more intense as we moved into the 1970s. Draft card burnings, sit-ins, and the flower children of San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district became the symbol of the decade.
To San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair.
People today complain that politics has turned into a 3-ring circus with candidates grandstanding to get on TV. But as we look back at old footage, we saw that that's nothing new.
Gregory Sims is a liberal Republican looking for Democratic votes in the congressional election in San Mateo County coming up in November. He decided to take off in a balloon filled with what he called political hot air, and they started pumping up the balloon about 10 minutes after 11. We talked to him before he went off the ground and asked him why he selected this method to let people know about his campaign.
I braved the obvious analogies that might be drawn simply because I have to demonstrate to the public that I have an ability to present myself in a unique manner, that I can think of ways that will draw their attention and make up for the fact that I don't have a famous name, that I don't have large campaign funds, and thus I have to use my head to bring myself before the public.
Up and away, my beautiful, my beautiful.
And when it came to effectively using the media, there was always San Francisco Mayor Joseph Alioto. During his first year in office, he took a hard stand when it came to a threatened strike by public employees.
Now, I would make these kind of classifications. I would make a classification that would involve the police, the firemen, the teachers, and garbage collectors, and say categorically in the law that they cannot strike. Calvin Coolidge said it as well as anybody ever said it, I guess, when he said you cannot strike against the public interest. And this gets too close to it. Now, if you say that, you have to have a correlative to back that up. The correlative is machinery that in the final analysis will lead to advisory arbitration, fact-finding, cooling off periods, and then finally to compulsory arbitration if necessary.
In 1970s, Strawberry Point schoolteacher Rita Abrahms involved her 4th grade students in a song she had written. The song became a top 40 sensation, and our cameraman Willie Key turned it into one of the very first music videos.
Where people aren't afraid to smile and stop and talk with you a while, and you can be as friendly as you want to be. Mill Valley, talking about Mill Valley, that's my home.
Also with the 70s came a change in our anchors. In 1971, Mike Tuck and Ron Fortner teamed up together. They were followed in 1974 by Marcia Brandwin and George Redding. Stan Atkinson and Judd Hambrick each followed George as Marcia's co-anchor.
In 1976, Dennis joined Channel 2's anchor team with Judd Hambrick. Andy Park, though, replaced Judd, and then Barbara Simpson replaced Andy. All this talk about replacing has me nervous.
Don't worry about it. The best change came, though, as far as I'm concerned, although everyone else was very professional. Of course, the best change came just a couple of years ago in '86 when you joined us.
Well, thank you very much.
I think that's
My
without
blushing.
saying, that's right. Yeah. The country, though, experienced changes. The war in Vietnam was finally over, but its effect would last well into the '80s. Cars lined up for miles during the Arab oil embargo, and a gas shortage resulted.
Newspaper heiress Patricia Hearst was kidnapped from her Berkeley apartment by the SLA. But before she was released, she and her captives robbed the bank and left a trail across the U.S. that ended in a violent shootout in Los Angeles.
Jimmy Carter became president in 1976, and the antics of his family became nightly news stories, some more amusing than others, as reported by anchor Judd Hambrick.
Billy Carter, the president's colorful younger brother, has gone on a diet and lost more than 15 pounds, and that's good. His secret, though, he stopped eating. He drinks nothing but beer. Billy's visiting his brother in the White House this week, but he got lost in the presidential mansion. He said it's just too damn big. He was found stumbling around. Billy gossiped about, with the president about the old town, Plains, Georgia. They both agreed that it's just gone downhill, much like this newscast.
Within 1 week's time, the Bay Area was shocked by the killing of Congressman Leo Ryan and the Jonestown massacre. And then, just 9 days later, the assassination of San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk.
Jonestown hit our newsroom especially hard. Bob Brown, who was an NBC cameraman at the time, was killed on the tarmac along with Congressman Leo Ryan. Bob was working for NBC then, but he had been a long-time employee right here at Channel 2.
The 70s ended on an up note, with record-breaking crowds lined up to see the coming of King Tutankhamun.
Now when he was a young man, he never thought he'd see people stand in line to see the boy king. How'd you get so funky?
The 80s have been marked by contrasts. Ronald Reagan became the first movie actor to become president. 6 years later, Clint Eastwood made everyone's day when he was voted mayor of Carmel.
I mean, Mr. Smith goes to Carmel.
You got it. I mean, happy ending at all.
Yeah, it is. It could have been a darn near bit of movie, the whole thing.
Mother Nature made her presence known. Marin County felt the force with torrential rains resulting in major mudslides.
The small town of Coalinga was rocked awake with a 5.0 earthquake. And when Mount St. Helens blew, it sent an ash cloud all the way around the world.
Then there was Humphrey the whale, who swam into San Francisco Bay and got lost halfway up the Delta. For days, the Bay Area watched and hoped that Humphrey would find his way back out the Golden Gate.
We're too close in there, Barry. We see him floundering around in there. Let him work his way out.
We also celebrated anniversaries. Both the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge turned 50 years old.
Bringing the weather to you has always been something we take very seriously. Bob Wilkins was our weathercaster in the early 70s, and he handed over the reins to that new kid in town.
According to the chart here, the last 60 days, you've been right 59 times, and that's a higher batting average than I had on the air.
Not bad.
So you're not going to have any problems with this at all?
No, and you're leaving me in pretty good shape. I do, particularly, I appreciate the condition within which you left the thermal trough outside the gate. No moss, it was cleaned up, and I thought that was decent.
But the big problem you will have in the Bay Area is not the thermal trough. It's satisfying your cohorts over there.
Big job.
I don't even remember doing that with Bob.
How long ago was that?
Oh, well, I guess that was 1974. Yeah.
Gracious. You've done 2 stints as weather now.
Mm-hmm. Actually, 3.
I
did the weather for about a year, and then I left, and then I came back about 9 months later, and then I left, and now I'm back again.
Is it better now, the third time around?
It is so much better now, you wouldn't believe it. I love it.
Is there any truth to what they were saying? You're the Billy Martin of Channel 2?
Yeah, I've heard that, yeah. I've heard that.
But we're glad to have you back now, and we know you would go to great lengths and even great heights to get us the weather, wouldn't you?
Yes.
They want a what? They want a weather report? Let's, Stanley, let's take a look at a picture I just took myself a few minutes ago. It's called a satellite picture. You folks can see that not much is happening. Action to the north of us. That stream of moisture coming in from the south, from the remnants of Madeline. And we're looking pretty good, at least, well, today. There's an overcast right now over the Bay Bridge, but looks like a shaft of sunlight is trying to come through. I don't believe doing a weather report up here.
I don't believe it. You look terrified.
I was scared to death.
How did they actually get you to get up there?
Are you kidding me? Don McQuaig says, hey, you want to go up on the Bay Bridge, Pat? And I say, sure.
Sure, sounds like a lot of fun.
Don McQuaig has gotten a lot of us into difficulties like that. Yeah.
Yes, he has. He's an excellent camera person, though, but he's...
one of the best.
One of the best, yeah.
But a real, what's his name, Indiana Jones is what he is. Well, you know, Dennis has also gone to great heights to bring in the story. Now, you take this series on the world's most dangerous sports.
Now there's very little left to do that would get me out of this situation. And if you're wondering, yes, I am scared. But my canopy opened okay, but the suspension lines were twisted. That corrected itself quickly. Now all I had to do was follow the direction of Perry's arrows. Dennis's eyesight, though, was very bad.
Tell him I can't see the arrow.
Don't forget, even as I quiver in fear, you would not be seeing any of this if not for Don, who, by the way, handed me his camera, still rolling, giving you a glimpse of his own false smile of security. Finally, the summit. Two students and Dennis quickly discovered that patience and good conditioning was a necessity. That's because this process was repeated time.
Run, 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 ease it out. Now pull it in a little bit. Good. Now just ease it out. Push, push. All right.
And time.
A little bit. All right. Woo. All right.
And time again.
Pull it in a little bit. Now push, push. Okay.
Until finally we got it right.
That's great. You know, you're always so self-controlled in the newsroom. It's nice to see you out there in terror.
I don't know how I even let them talk me into doing things like that. You haven't always been so calm and self-assured either, though, young lady.
No.
I honestly can't do it. I'm going to pass out in the elevator.
No, go. Can I make it?
Look, I can't do this.
You're fine.
Okay, you probably have to set your equipment down, straddle it.
I'm convinced that anyone who doesn't admit to being afraid here is either under heavy medication or is extremely nearsighted. After the elevator ride, you have to climb 2 ladders to make your way to the top and then go through a hatch cover. And then there's only one direction to go in. After you're up here for a while, you find out there's nothing to be afraid of. Your fear just melts away. In fact, this is the most breathtaking view I've ever seen, and I hope everyone gets a chance to come up and see it. I suppose you can tell that everyone else seems to be doing just fine, riding with no problems at all. Well, I think it's only because they got all the good elephants, and the one left from me must have come from somewhere out of the wilds of Africa.
It is the worst thing I have ever done in my whole life.
No, the wrong end.
Oh, that's right.
Here you come, here you come. You're doing great.
They won't let you forget, you know?
Oh,
they just won't let you forget.
Hilarious. That was great, though. How did they get you into that now?
The same guy, Don McQuaid.
We should have a meeting and sit down and talk with Don.
We ought to have a nice meeting with Donald.
So let's talk now. Who was the bravest?
I think you were. Because you look the most terrified on top of the bridge, the same place that you went. But you
Well,
look
I
terrified.
just don't have as much courage as you guys. You know, that's all. You know, I'm afraid of everything. Heights, elephants, anything. And
But that was pure terror on your face. Everybody who watched that at home was with you right up to the hill on
lived through the terror.
Oh, it was great. But you know what, though? Even we all had our share of it. I would rather be up there in the air or jumping out of that airplane than going down river rafting or spelunking like our friend George Watson.
Oh, yes.
So, there you go. Okay, ready? Okay, arms straight up. Straight up, that's it. Now just straight up. You didn't turn face. Turn a little bit more this way. Okay. Now do it. There you go.
There is a certain appealing logic to spelunking. If you crawl into a hole, you should be able to crawl out.
Got a hurt on the shoulder. Ah, it's a boy.
I don't feel so bad.
There is no way anyone could have gotten me down there.
I don't understand how you can pack so many people in that room. If they had me go in there first, everyone in front of me would have been in trouble because I would have had to come out.
I know. They would have had to tied me up and shoved me down there to get me in there in the first
For
place.
once, though, the camera wasn't down the
No,
pipe.
it wasn't. We have other crazy people in the newsroom. In 1978, we started a very special feature on the 10 o'clock news called Segment 2. Over the years, we've all had our chance to bring that special or unusual story that merited being called a Segment 2. But no story I can think of best exemplifies what Segment 2 is all about than the story Bob McKenzie did with a boy named Marco Cordova. Here's a portion of that story.
Marco is this year's March of Dimes poster child for Monterey County. But before you begin pitying Marco for his birth defects, maybe you'd better get to know him. To start with, Marco likes to do things for himself. His little legs don't bend, but Marco has learned to do remarkable things. He can draw and write using only his feet. He's only 4.5, but already he can print his name and several other words. He's one of the brightest children in his class.
How about when you grow up? What would you like to do when you grow up, you think, maybe?
Make it a doctor.
A doctor? Well, that'd be wonderful. You got to go to school and do a lot of studying for that. Do you like school?
Yeah.
What's the best part about school?
Well, I like to do my homework.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of kids don't like homework.
How come?
I don't know. They think it's that work is not fun.
Yeah.
But you do, don't you?
Yeah.
Marco likes to play with trucks, and when he finds an unsuspecting stranger, he talks him into a race. The visitor will decide to let Marco win. Then he finds out it isn't as easy as he thought.
To bring you up to date, Marco Cordova turns 14 years old next month. He's very into playing the drums, and he is currently forming his own band. In 1986, we expanded our daily news coverage to 2 hours with the addition of 2 at noon.
And now, live from Channel 2, Barbara Simpson and Bob McKenzie with 2 at noon.
Hi, I'm Barbara.
And I'm Bob.
Our show begins at noon, and during the first half hour, we have all the news of the day.
Then we follow up the top local story with an in-depth interview with the people making the news.
And in California, food is news. Narcy David joins us weekly with food and cooking tips. His recipes are always delicious.
Dr. David Watts is with us every day to bring you the latest information you need to live a healthier life.
And on Tuesdays, Bob Shaw tells you what movie is the best bet. And on Fridays, we have the latest from the fashion world.
Our show hasn't been here for 30 years, but we have.
Speak for yourself, Bob.
Well, I mean, personally.
And of course, there is the weekend news team of George Watson and Leslie Griffith. In addition to our regularly scheduled newscasts, we've also done news specials. And thank goodness our technical quality has improved since this look at new cars with Ray Jacobs.
Specialty cars as the Avanti.
We also went behind the scenes to see what it takes to get a telephone on the air.
2. Right now, 2. 1, get the guy he's talking to.
And he's
the guy he's introducing, 1. The guy he's introducing!
In the 1987 Angel of Death special, KTVU got an exclusive interview with this country's most prolific serial killer, Donald Harvey.
Well, even though everything that's happened, I consider myself a nice person, a caring person.
And when it comes to putting all the information together on a major event, we brought you Murder in Midair, a look at the PSA airline crash. And most recently, Fatal Obsession, the story behind the shootout in Sunnyvale.
Now, just in case we've left you with the impression that news is all serious business, let us assure you we all have our moments.
I think I'll just sneak out of the national weather scene and come right back to California where that bush is growing.
Again, he didn't bring us any.
Not a sample in sight. There will be more news later, but coming up next, Dennis and I chat with the presidential hopeful on segment 2. Stay with us.
Harry Park is on a well-deserved vacation, but when you have someone as versatile as George Washington...
Thanks, Dennis. I'm going to wear a little name tag next time I come on this
George
set.
Watson.
Okay, I got it now. All right. Okay, I can do it now.
Will you come on, please?
All right, I can do it now.
Now, as these two fronts meet or clash, steady, or collude, as it were, we didn't feed it tonight, did we?
I want to hide. I can't do this. This is silly. You rolling? Here I come. The turnout was only about 51%. I'm coming out of the booth.
This is Claude Mann in Berkeley. We're a peace demonstration.
Berkeley.
This is Claude Mann in San Francisco, where a peace demonstration turns into a riot.
Why do we seem to go through this story every single year? Why do you... Wait, no. For the funny reel.
My makeup started to run, and we're going to do it now.
It's also refreshing to be visiting a college that not only is interested in teaching its students what they need to know to make a living, but is also interested in teaching them what they need to know to make that living worthwhile. This is Claude Mann reporting from the California College of Arts and Crafts in the East Bay on special assignment education.
They say with this immunization program, they've pretty well nipped it in the bud.
The butt.
Plus a lot of firecrackers going off along the side streets as well.
Well, believe it or not, Barbara, these firecrackers are supposed to frighten away evil demons.
Dennis is making me do this now.
I didn't do nothing. I didn't do nothing.
You're sitting here snickering. I almost had it. Did we ever do the news brief that night?
I think it took about a half hour to get a 10-second news brief on.
Was it? I think it was your fault. I'm sure it was.
Probably. But you know what? We're lucky that some of the other bloopers didn't get recorded.
Yes.
They run us out of town.
I love Claude when he's working so hard on that and it just falls apart.
It can be fun. It can be fun. We've had a lot of time. We're going to take a break and we'll be back in just a bit.